You can start.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the first math talk that the Upper School Math Circle is hosting for the 2022 to 23 school year. This is going to be a panel that serves as an introduction to some of our younger or newer Bobcats to the AMC 10 and 12 competition, as well as other tournaments that either BASIS or us as a Math Circle will host. Our presenters on the panel includes leadership student from the Math Circle Club. I will begin by introducing myself and our panelists. So hi everyone, my name is Irene. I'm a current senior. And then if we just go down the panel, there's Maggie, and Maggie is also in 12th grade. Maggie, do you want to wave? And then Derek. Derek is another senior. And then we have Felix, senior, and Rohan, who is a sophomore. Mr. Das is also here as, and he is the primary advisor and the host of the BASIS Math Circle. So essentially, Mr. Das has covered
I have been organizing this for now since 2019, I think. So many years doing this.
Mm-hmm. So Mr. Das covered this a little bit at the beginning, but we will be introducing AMC and the other contests in a discussion format. So feel free to drop any question in the chat anytime as we are introducing the competitions one by one. We will be answering the questions as we speak, but we'll also be popping answers and resources in the chat as well. So keep an eye on those.
Yeah. In addition to chat, it's a small group. So if somebody wants to unmute themselves and ask a question, please feel free to do that.
Yes. And also pretty much all of what we're covering today, we have organized them into a document with some dates and locations and resources and links. So we will be sending out some of these information in a PDF later. Reminder that this meeting is being recorded and the recording will be posted on our YouTube account later, probably. So if you miss anything, you can also watch it again later. For students, if you're new to Math Circle, you can go ahead and join our Discord server if you're not there already, because many communications will be facilitated that way. Okay, so let's actually get started. We will begin by talking a little bit about the AMC competition, because that is definitely a math competition that is very big, and we do encourage every student to take the AMC exam, as it is also one of the main way, the AMC score will be the main way that we do team assignment for some of our other tournament. So can we start off with a quick introduction on what AMC is?
Yeah, so a quick introduction on AMC 10 and 12. They are both 25 question, 75-minute multiple choice exams for high school students. And the difference between the two are AMC 10 is for grades 10 and under, whereas 12 is for 12 and under. But if you're younger, you can still take the 12. And they both have two tests, the A and the B, that are designed to be of the same difficulty, but they have distinct problems and they're on different dates, and they will have different AMY cutoffs. And so after the AMC comes the AMY, or American Invitational Mathematics exam, and this one is a 15-question, 3-hour short answer exam. And after you take that, the combined score from AMC and AMY will make you eligible for USAGMO or USAMO, depending on if you took the 10 or the 12. And those are 6-question, 2-day, 9-hour proof-based exams. And based on your performance for those, you'll be eligible for camp and ultimately IMO.
Unmuted. One question that we received from our student is that my son is in 8th grade and is taking pre-calculus AB. Is it a good idea for him to take the AMC 10? Does anyone have thoughts on that?
So let me give my answer first, and then others can answer that, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So first, what I'm going to say is primarily based on data that I observed from getting the scores for the basis students. Every year, people send me their scores because of team placement. Okay. Actually, even before that, there is one part of the question was that my student is doing calculus. So that is a fact that calculus is not part of the curriculum. So that's a fact. So no data there. The other piece is, I think from the data that I see, there is no strong correlation between a student's grade and their performance in AMC, or a student's level at the school math and their performance in AMC. Okay. And the reason for the second one is, I think that school math and AMC are very different. School math is more about knowing the subject and doing some drills, and AMC is a lot of problem solving. And when I say no correlation, what I see is every year we have middle school students who do very good in AMC 10 tests, primarily 10. I don't recall someone doing very good in 12 because people typically do 10, but possibly 12 as well. And students get a distinguished honor roll as well. Even last year, we had a 6th grader who got a distinguished honor roll in AMC 10. So first part is to that question is, there is no clear correlation between your grade and whether you should do it or not. Your performance is not dictated by that. Now, whether you should write it or not is a question that only the student and the parent can answer, and it depends on a number of factors. First thing is, what is the harm in writing that? Okay, so if you don't do well, you don't do well, but there is a risk that some students don't take well to not doing well. So as a parent and a student, you have to evaluate that. And if that is the case, maybe you can take a mock and assess how you're going to do. If your student is not like that, if they are not impacted and they take it as an opportunity to learn, then what's the harm? And you may as well you may end up doing good as well, because many middle school students do very well in AMC 10. Anyone wants to add to that answer?
Yeah, I'll add a little bit to it. So in AMC and AMC AMI and a lot of the other tournaments that we will be covering, calculus is actually not a topic that is covered. It might help you in some problems, but knowing calculus does not means that you will get better scores in these exams. Instead, most of these exams will be testing on separate theorems, such as shoelace theorems, that you will only learn by doing practice competition math questions. So I agree with Mr. Das in that there is no correlation between the math course that you're taking at school, your performance, and whether you should take AMC depends on how much time you believe you can be put into studying for these specific exams.
So one thing I would add to your answer, Irene, is I don't think, at least in my opinion, others can opine, knowing Scher's theorem or something like that is a prerequisite. Okay. Because AMC problems are supposed to be that if you have good problem solving and you have basics, you can do it. Having said that, there are some things like shoelace theorem, etc., that help, and that is where our math circle has been helping students improve. But it's not a necessary thing. If somebody looks, hears what you said and says Scher's theorem, you said Scher's theorem, is that right? And not shoelace. If somebody hears Scher's theorem and says that I have not heard of it, maybe I should not write it, I think that's the wrong message. I don't think that's a prerequisite.
Okay, yes, I agree as well. There are multiple ways about solving the questions that knowing specific theorem might not directly help you with that. Do we have any other thoughts about which AMC, how do the student go about deciding which AMC they want to take? I know some of us have in the past maybe take a 10 for A and a 12 for B. Does anyone have any thoughts about whether they should take
so
the same one for both?
Let me start on that one also, because I have very clear thoughts on that. Okay. So first, let me start by saying when my daughter was in 9th grade, okay, we did not know much, okay, and we got this opportunity that you can write it twice. So we said, like you said, that why not do 110 and 112, okay, you get to do 2 tests, okay. Now, in retrospect, that was not the right decision, and I know we did that, and I'm sure others do that as well. I know in our batch, other students did it, okay. So, and I will explain in a minute why that was not the right decision, okay. The second thing I find some students doing, and particularly last year, I saw a few students have been sending me their scores doing, is they say AMC 12 is it's easier to qualify for AME through AMC 12. So let me write AMC 12. And personally, I don't think that's a great decision as well. So let me explain my thinking, okay? And first thing is, some of these things that I'm going to say are based on statistics that are very well available. You can just Google AMC cutoff and you will get to a AOPS page which has all this data available, okay? And I'm just going to do spot picking of those numbers. You are not doing very rigorous analysis, but I think what I'm going to say is going to make sense, okay? So actually, let's first start with the first thing is this thought that it's easier to qualify for AME through AMC 12. So let me write AMC 12. There is some basis to that. It's not without basis, okay? Historically, it's easier to qualify for AME through AMC 12 because sometimes AME cutoffs for AMC 12 are very low. Like last year's 12B cutoff, I think was 84, if I'm not wrong, yeah. And in 2020, both the 12A and 12B cutoffs were 87, which I think are on the low side. So there is a fact that, yes, it may be easier to qualify, but I think there is a lot more to the story than that, okay? So what is the point of doing well in AMC is to move to the next step, which is AME, and then possibly move to USAMO, JMO, okay? So this thing that qualifying for AME is easier through 12, that's where the value of doing 12 versus 10 ends. If you now look at the other things, okay, if you look at actually, even before I get into the data, okay, so one thing is if you qualify through 12, you can only qualify for USAMO, the without the J is the US American Math Olympiad, okay? And if you do through 10, you can only qualify for the JMO, which is like the junior AMO, okay? Now, if you look at cutoffs for JMO and AMO, you will find that it's much harder to qualify for AMO than JMO, okay? So for example, if I take last year's statistic, just one, and I think that's very representative, you can go and look at other data and it all is very much like that, okay? Last year, the fall tournament, okay, if you did AMC 10A, the cutoff for JMO was 203.5, okay? And if you did 12A, the cutoff for AMO was 222. So now if you, okay, before I answer the next part, because other people may not be familiar with it, what does this number mean? Okay, the number, like Irene said, is cumulative. So you take your AMC 10 or 12 score, and you take your AME score, and multiply that by 10 and add that to, and that's this number that I'm talking about. It's called, I think, AMO index, JMO index, something like that. But it's AMC score plus 10 times your AME score, okay? So if you assume that you got a 9 in AME, which in my opinion is on the very hard side, getting a 9, okay? Then from AMC 10A to qualify for JMO with that cutoff meant that you had to have 113.5, okay? Whereas if you got a 9 in AME with that 12A, it meant you had to have a score of 132 versus 113.5, okay? And this when AMC 12 is supposed to be harder than AMC 10 as well. So if you're looking at the next step, it's clearly a bad decision to try to go through 12. But even more important is you have to think whether JMO or AMO is the right test for you to write. Maybe you qualify through both, okay? And that's a decision you have to make as well. Another related fact is both AMC 10 and 12 does this thing called a distinguished honor roll, which again is a badge you can use that I got a distinguished honor roll. And again, it's much harder to get a distinguished honor roll from 12 than 10. Like last year's 10A distinguished honor roll was at 117 and 12A distinguished honor roll was at 130.5, okay? So in summary, what I'm saying is, although qualifying for AME may be easier, and that also is questionable because if you look at the statistics, sometimes it is much easier, sometimes the gap is not that much. It is always lower, but it's not that much. But the next steps, it's much harder if you are trying to go through the 12 route. So Does that mean it's not the right decision for anyone doing 12 versus 10? That's not correct. Okay. There is a very small subset of people for whom it may be better to write AMO than JMO. And those are the people who should write 12 versus 10. And that's the only people that I recommend should do that. Now, the question is, who are they? First thing is, if you are one of those people, I think you already know that. So you don't need me to tell you that, okay? And if you don't know that, a rule of the thumb, I would say is, if you have not written JMO once, and if you have not scored 14 in JMO once, then most likely you are not in that group. And if you are in that group, you know very well, and you'd go and do what you think is right. So that's my answer to that question.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Das. I think that covers exactly it. Does anyone have anything else that they want to talk about in terms of how to pick which AMC to take?
First of all, I would disagree with the point that very few people should take AMO instead of JMO, because like if you're trying to get into the camp, the cutoffs for AMO are usually around 12 points lower than the cutoffs for JMO, which means that for taking the JMO to be better, you need to consistently be able to get problems 1 and 4 correct, fully correct in a small amount of time, which is definitely not easy. And also, again, when you're taking 10 and 12, this is something that depends on your skill sets. If you don't know something like complex numbers, trigonometry, you should definitely be taking the 10 because the 12 covers those and the 10 doesn't. But I think that if you know all of the concepts and it's just about problem solving, I think that then is when it becomes easier to qualify for the AME through 12. But it definitely is harder to qualify for Olympiad through the 12.
Okay, thank you, Rohan, for that point. So I guess to sum it up, it would depend on a case-by-case basis, and for you to look at the student's own math background as well as your goal. Like for the specific year, is your goal to qualify for AME, or are you looking beyond that to look at your USAML, USAGMO, and CAMP? So if you are on the borderline there and are debating, I think one wonderful resource would be just go ahead and go onto the ALPS website and take a look at the past year cutoffs, and as well as how your student scores on those practice exams. I think those will probably give you the most direct perspective to see where your the student would place in that range. Anything else on the topic?
Yeah, just to reiterate what I said, in addition to qualifying, Irene, people should not forget the DHR as well. I think DHR, Distinguished Honor Roll, is also an important badge of honor. Again, people don't get it, but if you're shooting for it, keep that in your sight as well when you decide which one to do.
Yeah, so there's those awards that the A and AA will be offering to the students with high scorings. And again, the specifics could be found on their websites. It's given sometimes there are ones to perfect scores or to like top 5%, or if you scored above a certain score and you're like in 8th grade or something, there's all those different awards they can find online. And you should be taking those in consideration as you're planning to take your AMC exams.
So one thing,
yeah.
One more thing, let me add to this, which actually goes back to the AMC and why AMC are so popular. I think most people know this already, but when we started, we did not know this, okay? That many colleges are increasingly asking for your AMC score. And I have heard Poshan Low say that at CMU, they don't even look at your SAT math score any longer because that's not a good indicator. They look at AMC score. Other colleges may be doing the same thing. So AMC scores are important, and many colleges ask you to provide your 10 score and a 12 score.
Yeah, so that's definitely something to keep in mind as well. So the application would ask you for your awards, for national ranked awards, as well as some might ask for your AMC scores. So definitely keep that in mind as you're planning on what competitions you want to take.
Okay. So Irene, there is a question, maybe we can take it right now and then continue with the script. So Roshan is asking, you want to read this question? brother?
Is the question sent through chat to everyone?
Maybe he just sent it to me so I can say what the question is. So
Okay.
he's asking, where can I find a list of all the theorems that are good to know for AMC 1012? And I think, Irene, your mentioning of Scher's theorem may have triggered that question. So I do know that there are various people who have put together compendiums of what is
Yes.
important to know. I'm not, any one of you has a good one that you want to share with others, like
I do have some links saved. I will put them in chat later when someone else is speaking. I'll go ahead and pull them up and share those in chat with you. So there are documents that you can find online if you search up like AMC fact sheets, where it will list you a lot of different theorems that they think you should study for the AMC. So again, I'll pull those up later when someone else is speaking.
So the only thing I would add there is, this is internet. A lot of people have a lot of resources. Okay, hopefully whatever you're pulling up is a good one.
Okay, yes. I think this one is linked from the LPS website, and I think it should be pretty credible.
Okay.
And on that note, we will move on actually to our.
I think last year I saw this brother and sister pair, Sohail Rathi and Sejal Rathi. They have a website. I do think they also put together a list like that. I think it's called Omega Math or some Omega Math. Google for Sejal Rathi, Sohail Rathi, and Omega Math and see what you find. But you share yours one as well, Irene.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so Maggie has put a link to that in chat. And on that note, we will be moving on to our next topic, actually, which is how should we be preparing for the AMC exam? Because I do know from last year, since last year, the AMC 10 and 12 had been moved up. It used to happen around February. Well, it used to happen later in the year, but this year is going to be occurring the first one on November 10 and the second one on November 16. So it is fast approaching with only 2 more months. Yes, I can do math. 2 more months before we take the AMC exam. So do you guys want to share a little bit about the resources that you use to prepare for the AMC exam? We will be hosting another math talk closer to the AMC exam on some tips. But just as general resources, do any of you have any tips for students at this point of time?
So on AOPS, they have a lot of past tests, past practice problems, but they also have classes like their AMC 10, 12, and AMY problem solving series and seminars. And they also have WOOT. They also make textbooks. There's the volume 1, which covers up until AMC 10 difficulty, and the volume 2, which goes from around AMC 12 to MOP level problems. And they have a variety of specialized math textbooks, like from pre-algebra to calculus. And they have like introduction to geometry or intermediate geometry, stuff like that. And you can find that all on their website.
Yeah, but given the time left for this year's AMC, again, it depends on which AMC you're targeting. The time left for this year's AMC, I think the seminars that you mentioned may be the most efficient one because there is not so much time left.
And another resource that I would like to share is something called Trivial. It is a website that is made by a former basis student. And basically what he did is he has taken all of the past AMC questions on AOPS and categorized them according to their topic and difficulty level. So if you go to this website, which I have just put in chat, you can very easily create sample tests according to the length, the difficulty level, and the topic of your choice. And the other thing is that I have found the resource I was looking for. So this is a AOPS page that links to some of the resources. And from those resources, the one that I found the most useful is this Google document. It is 53 pages, and it definitely covers a lot of what you should remember for your AMC exam. So I definitely recommend you to look at that, the second Google Docs strategies and formula link.
And finally, what I would also add is, remember, these are essentially problem solving tests. So these are, the more you practice, the better you are most likely going to do. Again, people may disagree with me, but I think that's my opinion. So it's good to see practice tests you can find. I know Alpha Star has some free practice tests on their site, and you can also buy practice tests from them. So that's a good resource in the remaining time. We had on the Basis Math Circle, we had, I think, 4 practice tests last year. And we can we will re-enable them. So if you did not do those 4 practice tests last year, you will have them through the Ed clubs, and you can do those 4 again. I think one of them overlaps with the Alpha Star most likely. So those are some practice tests you do. You can do. You can of course do the actual AMCs. The trick with actual AMCs is, if you're doing any studying, you may have seen the problems otherwise. So sometimes they don't give you a real flavor, but you can always do them. But yeah, my summary is do practice.
Yeah. So make sure you know their theorems, but more importantly, you know how to apply them to your different problems. So at this point, I think we should move on to some of the other contests. So Mr. Das, other than the AMC, what are
So before we move,
okay.
move on, because AMC I think
yes.
is the most important thing in people's mind. In fact, many students in the math circle just do AMC and don't do any other contest. So let's take a pause and see if anyone has any questions. So anyone has any question, use this opportunity to ask about AMC, and then we will move on to other tests.
And also, if no one has any question, I don't think we've talked about test taking strategies yet.
Yeah, we can spend some time on test taking strategies. Why don't we do that?
Johan, do you have any particular tips?
One tip I'm going to strongly emphasize is that if you know how to do a problem with like bashing it with algebra stuff, and you see that the problem is probably solvable in a cleaner way, you should not just hesitate from bashing it. I always try to prefer synthetic solutions even when I don't know what they are, and that has costed me a lot. So I would strongly advise not to do that.
Yes, definitely. Anything else from anyone?
So AMC is AMC. There is a big difference between AMC, AME, and the next level test. Okay. In my opinion, again, I have not written this test, so my opinions are opinions. In my opinion, AMC is a speed test. Okay. AME becomes much less of a speed test, but AMC is primarily a speed test. There is also an accuracy aspect because there is a kind of negative marking going on there. They do it differently, but there is a quote unquote negative marking. Okay. So given it's a speed test, I think time management becomes very important. So, and I don't have any particular tips to share about time management, but as you do this practice tests, that's one thing I would be, if I were writing the test, I would be preparing for is how am I managing the time? Okay. Any of you have a tip on time management that you want to share, or any of your personal anecdotes of what you did right or did not do right?
I think for time management, my tip is always just time yourself when you're doing the test. Even if you know that I don't have time to sit through the whole exam, time yourself, see how much time you are taking on those questions. And I do think one very good practice to do is that people have different opinions on this, but should you be checking time regularly when you're taking the test? And I think when you're doing practices, you should be practicing that. If you're someone who like to look at the time, make sure that you practice looking at the time so that during the exam, you're not stressing out. Practice how to check your progress without stressing out and making it like affect you working on the problem. But definitely, for me, it's just practice of problems while keeping track of time, even if I know I am not going to be finishing the whole test. Like, no, I'm not sitting through the whole 90-minute test, 75-minute test. Yeah.
Yeah, so there is a question which was sent to everyone, but let me read that question. And I think it's an important one before we move on. Are we going to discuss AMI strategies too? And I think we should do before we move off. And if somebody is interested in JMO, MO, we can discuss that as well. But let's at least discuss AMI, okay? So I can start, although again, I have not written AMI, I have a bunch of opinions and then others can add, okay? So first thing, like I said, AMI is a very different test than AMC. Okay, AMC is a speed test and AMI is there is still a matter of speed because you have still only 3 hours to do 15 problems. But when you do 15 problems in 3 hours, that speed variation changes a lot. Okay, I think in AMI, you need to have a little more or a little, more knowledge or more rigor of the 4 topics that get tested in all these competitions, that is geometry, number theory, combinatorics, and algebra. Last year we did talk with Adam Tang, who was a graduating senior at that year, and he shared his perspective on AMI and in particular his struggle with AMI. So it's on our YouTube channel, and if you're interested in that, you can look at that. And the thing he talked about, and which I've seen looking at people's score, is he was hitting a wall in AMI around 10, and how to move up from 10 was a struggle for him. And he talked about how he did that, and it took him time, but he managed to do that. So if you want to know, you can review that. But even getting to 10, I think, is on the hard side. I see from the scores that I get, many students get capped around 8 and they don't move beyond that. And getting at least to 9 or 10 is needed if you need to move to the next step. So it's a test that I think if you're serious, you need to prepare a little bit more diligently for. Okay. Now for resources, again, I'm sure the student panel will add more details, but I think the courses that Maggie was talking about, like the AOPS courses, I think they are much more relevant for AMI. Like they have a intermediate number theory, intermediate counting and probability course. I think those are the 2 good courses for getting stronger number theory and combinatorics. And there may be other resources as well. But that, in my opinion, is very useful for AMI. And AMI, you have time, so you can start preparing for AMI now. Anyone wants to add to that? And before I forget, of course, Math Circle does a good job with that, but AlphaStar does a great job as well. AlphaStar has good AMI course classes. You may want to look at them as well.
A comment I had about AMC 10 time management was that one thing that I have done really badly, and I'm sure many people have done to a lesser extent, is that for the first few problems, I just thoroughly overcheck all of my solutions, and I end up taking way too long on that. And that is something to definitely avoid. And on the topic of resources for AMI preparation, I think that the momentum learning courses are also really useful.
Which one, Ron? I could not hear it.
Momentum learning.
Momentum learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rohan, would you mind dropping a link in the chat?
I will type it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, definitely agree with Rohan. So when you're practicing, don't just practice doing the problem, practice checking the problem. So you know how long you should be spending on checking your first, I don't know, 10 problems, depending on your level. But so don't over check them, but also make sure you're not throwing away those free points in the early few questions. And then my tip for AMI, I guess, not really for the people who want to move beyond 10 point, but for some of the more younger students, it's that AMI questions sometimes can be a bit disencouraging because they are designed to be extremely difficult. But do remember, you have 3 hours to do those problems. And just if you start working on them, then many times that you may find out that a really difficult seeming problems could be solved if you look at it, and from different angles.
I'd like to add on to what Irene just said. So one thing about AMY problems is that like what they usually are is that you just have to find one trick with them, or like it usually just comes down to finding one specific formula that you can use to solve the AMY problem. But if you like, let's say you solve 9 or 10 questions already, or like you can solve one question, but you can't find like a better solution than just pure bashing. Sometimes it might just be a better way to bash your way through the problem, like coordinate bashing, than trying to spend more time trying to find a clean solution, and you end up not being able to solve any more questions after that. So my advice would be like, don't be afraid to start bashing, because like by the time you procrastinate bashing, like you can already lose a lot of time that could be spent somewhere else.
Also, as you're bashing, sometimes you may be finding patterns that will lead to you being able to find that cleaner solutions. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And the thing that I would add, in addition to what Derek said 9 or 10 problems. That's good. I was smiling because I think if you're at 9, you are already most likely pretty good. Okay, so what I would add there is, yes, it's possible to get much higher. We have students who have even gotten perfect in AMY, but you need to have realistic assessment of what you need and what you can get. Okay, in most cases, if you can get 9 or 10 in AMY, it will most likely move you to the next level. And after the next level, the previous scores don't count. The index does not matter anymore. After that, what you do, the next step matters. So going back to what Derek was saying, if you have done 9 or 10 problems, maybe you don't even need to do more. And even if you're at less, maybe you can have a realistic expectation of, I just need to do this much so I can spend more time on fewer problems and get them right.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, also for that, like you should technically you should focus on getting more AMC 10 or 12 problems right, because those are generally easier than AMY problems. And like proportionally speaking, it'd be easier to get points from AMC 10 because each correct question is 6 points. And past like question 9 on the AMY, the difficulty jumps a lot. So getting an extra 10 points from that is a lot harder than getting, say, like 12 points from 2 questions on the AMC 10. So you should like be very careful. Like you don't want to overcheck, but you also shouldn't make any silly mistakes on your AMC 10 or 12, because that's like a good way to get less questions, for you to need less questions correct on the AMY to qualify for like JMO or AMO.
Yeah. And actually, that is a very good point, which goes back to the previous question we were discussing. Like I said, that when we knew not any better, we said, let's do 110 and 112. What's the harm? We are doing both. But it's a wrong decision exactly because of this, that for many people, your AMY score is going to be capped. Okay. There is a most likely, again, you can always cross it, but if you have a realistic expectation, 9 or 10 is most likely going to be your cap. It's very hard to move above that. Okay. So your AMC score is going to make that difference. So you want to take both attempts in doing what you want to do, because one can always go up and down.
Yes, I agree. And with AMC, it's much more getting that time management down.
So if there are no more questions on AMC and AMY, we can move to other contests, but let's check once more. Any other questions before we move to other contests? Okay, so if any other AMC or AMY question comes, we'll go back and take it because it's more important, but let's move to the second section of this panel then.
Yes, so the other competitions, my thoughts on the other competitions is that not as I think if Mr. Das mentioned it, less faces students actually participate in these competitions, but looking back from a college admission perspective, on your Common App, they would be asking you for 5 national level awards. So participating in these tournaments would eventually be a good help you build toward that award list. So,
Okay.
Mr. Das,
So
other,
Irene,
yeah,
I have
yeah.
a slightly different opinion on that. Let me
Oh,
add,
okay.
change, say my
Mhm.
opinion there, and then we'll move to what do we do.
Okay.
Again, this is what I have heard. Okay, that from the perspective of college admission, which should not be the only perspective by which you do things, is that right? But
Yes,
from
that's
the
true.
perspective of college admission, no other competition matters. Okay, the only exception to that is if you are applying to University of Waterloo in Canada. Okay, they run their own contest, which we will talk about when I talk what contest we host. And they ask for their contest scores, and they even give scholarships based on one of those contests. We will talk about that in a minute. Other than that rare exception of University of Waterloo, Canada, and their test, I think other college contests are not going to be impacting you from a college admission perspective. Yes, you can put that in your uh, you have 15 or so places where to fill all your achievements. Maybe you can use that to fill some of that, but the amount of time it takes is mostly, I don't know. The reason the kids who do this, the reasons they do this is not because it's going to help with their college admission. It's because they love doing it, and that's
true.
that's the reason you should be doing it. Okay.
That's
So
true.
let me uh, talk about what other opportunities we have, and then we can discuss them in more detail. Okay. So we have a few buckets of competitions that we host. Okay, so first thing is you can think of things that happen on site at bases. Okay, and second is things that are not on site at bases. During COVID, these things were all happening online, but now maybe they will again go back to physical on site. So these are what are called as college contests. Typically, college contests could be non-college as well. So if you look at first the on-site ones, okay. Primarily the on-site competitions, we as Math Circle, even before I go there, so we did not discuss this, that AMC is organized by the school. Math Circle has no role in that other than helping you prepare. Okay, and maybe sending you a reminder that Math Circle, I'm sorry, AMC registration is up. So AMC is hosted by school, and that's the only competition that's hosted by school. Okay, the rest Math Circle organizes. Okay, so we organize. First thing is the Canadian competitions. And in Canada, there are two organizations, okay? One does the, what is called as the AMC 1012 and AME counterpart, which essentially ultimately leads to the Canadian math team selection, is called COMC, Canadian Open Math Contest, okay? Or competitions. The last C stands for either of them, but it's O. Okay, soon we will have a name which sounds very similar, and we have had students confuse it too. So we organize COMC. In Canada, it is used to select their team. It is slightly different than our AMC and AME concept in the sense that our AMC is completely what do you call multiple choice, and AME is not multiple choice. COMC, they combine the two tests. In fact, you can qualify for their AMO GMO counterpart directly from COMC. The top students qualify directly, and some write intermediate level. So we host the COMC, typically happens somewhere around November. Then there is another organization in Canada, which is essentially out of University of Waterloo, called CEMC. Okay, all this EOI, they're going to be very confusing. And CEMC organizes a series of competitions that we host. The most couple of more important ones. Okay, so first is they organize this thing called CSMC or CIMC. So S stands for senior, I for intermediate. It's very similar to 12 and 10, that if you are above, if you are 10, if you are grade 10 or lower, you can write either. If you're grade 12 or lower, you can write only the S. Okay, happens in November. We organize that. University of Waterloo asked for this contest in their application, if I'm not wrong. Okay. But the more important one, the University of Waterloo asked for, and they actually require that you do it, because I know, because we have had students from Valley Christian approach us saying, can we write it from your school? And we had to say no. They require you to write is called Euclid. Euclid is a proof-based exam, and it happens in, if I'm not wrong, April or March, somewhere like that. So we host the Euclid, and Euclid, anybody under grade 12 can write. And then we host another competition which happens a week before that, which is many ways preparation, like only 11th grade and below can write that. Is there is a set of three, Freyr, Galois, and Hypatia. So that's like a way to get to prepare for Euclid, but Euclid is an important one. They also do one called Pascal-Cayley format. I don't know if it is important or not. We have been organizing that, but those are the Canadian ones that we organize. Then on-site, we do another very important one because it's a fun competition. Again, not important from college application or something like that, because it's a very fun competition. We organize dinner for that, and it's a 4-hour. It's a 4-hour test for where you sit at basis and write. It's a proof-based. It's called Bay Area Mathematical Olympiad (BAMO). I think happens again in March or April timeframe. So those are the ones that you get to write at basis. Okay. Then off campus. Okay. Now things are fluid because these kind of things depend on whether we have a team which is willing to travel and all that stuff. Okay, so for the last couple of years, because of COVID, things were online and we were participating in so many, and so many people were interested in doing that. But I think this year everything is going back physical. So I will give you the answer prior to COVID. Okay, so prior to COVID, we used to participate in a few college contests. Of course, next door we have Berkeley. So Berkeley Math Tournament, BMT. This is an interesting one because BMT, we can send an unlimited number of teams. So anyone who wants to participate can participate in BMT. You will get placed in a team based on your standing, but you can participate, no restriction. In addition to BMT, the ones that we have been participating in are called Harvard MIT Math Tournament. Among all the college contests, if one is really a competition that stands out from everyone else, it's Harvard MIT Math Tournament. It's prestigious, it's fun, it is a great competition. And in the past, they actually do two. There is one called HMMT November, and then there is one called HMMT February. The difficulties of them are very different. And HMMT February is for more seasoned math competition participants, the people who are comfortable with high end of AME and comfortable with proof writing. And I actually recommend that people think seriously about are they ready for February versus November? Because in the past, I have had students who want to do February and not November because I think February is more prestigious or more glamorous, and then they go and they don't have a good experience. So you have a good sense of where you fit. Okay. November is more on the AMC 10-12 level competition, more accessible to people. Now, HMMT depends on whether we get in the lottery. Historically, we have always gotten in the lottery. So there's a lottery, and we will send, if we have enough people, a team to each. Okay, so that's one we'll participate in. We will participate in Stanford Math Tournament, again, just next door, so we can send a team. We will send a team of 8, so not everybody will get to participate. So based on your standing, we will select who goes. And then another one that we have participated when travel was required was called Caltech Harvey Mudd Math Competition, CHMMC. It used to happen in December timeframe. For the last few years during COVID, it happened in spring. I don't know what's their plan this year. So those are some of the college contests that we organized and participated in.
So thank you, Mr. Das. I think that was a pretty big summary on everything. Does anyone have anything to add for any of the competitions that Mr. Das just mentioned, whether it's how to prepare, which one to take, and stuff like that?
Okay, I'd like to add one thing about the college contest. So most of the college contests, for individual round, they offer the subject only tests. Like you can choose like algebra, number theory, discrete, or geometry, usually. So for those, it's a good idea to like kind of grind one specific subject if you like want to place high on like number theory or combinatorics. So that's a good way to study for those if you have some like AOPS book, or if you find some resources online. that'd be a good way to practice.
Right, and for which tournament has which subject for the individual round, you can always check out their website, and we will be sending out again more information, some information about what we covered today later.
Yeah, and the best way to prepare for some of these competitions is to do their past problems. I understand that HMMT, Harvard MIT Math Tournament, has a great consistency year to year. Berkeley Math Tournament, not so much. So Berkeley Math Tournament, if you look at 1 year, it may not get a sense of another year, but I think still it will give you some sense of what kind of contest it is.
Yes.
If we're going based on like past contests, one specific thing to know for HMMT is that 2 years ago, like the first time it was online, I believe that that was significantly different from the rest of the times that has happened. So you might want to stay away from that one.
Yeah, actually, that would be interesting thing. In general, when things moved online, everybody was playing with their format. Now things going back physically. I don't know what they will do with their format.
Yeah, so a lot of them would have to be updated about whether or not they're going to be in person or online, but a lot of them are returning in person this year. So I think Mr. Das has already sent out information about HMMT for
Yeah, so
registration.
we have the interest list open. So if anybody is interested in participating, please fill the interest list.
So you will have to travel to MIT. It is a pretty fun experience. The tests themselves usually include individual and team round, and there are different team round portions. And then we do plan the basis, our leadership students, we are planning to hold some practice rounds closer to tournament days. So that is also something to be on the lookout for team round preparations.
One thing I wanted to add is that some of these college competitions have something called a power
If Felix,
round.
we can, at least I cannot hear you. Can you speak a little louder?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
So some colleges have something called a power round. So if you're kind of like me and you don't do contest math that much, but you do like doing college math and other stuff, power round is also good. So I know competitions like PUMAC at Princeton, they have a power round where you can like do higher math problems. So last year I remember they had a section about metric spaces, and that was like a really good introduction to the topic. So if you're more interested into college math, you can also find competitions that give you introductions to the subject as well.
So that's a great point. And just because I had a little trouble, let me repeat. Okay, so what Felix is saying is many of these competitions have what they call as a power round. I think Stanford has a power round. I don't think HMMT has a power round, but SMT has a power round and Caltech Harvey Mudd has a power round. And the idea of a power round is they introduce a concept as part of that problem solving, and as a team you are learning that concept and solving some problems. Okay, so it's very interesting to, even if you're not interested in the competitive aspect, to learn from that. Actually, same another thing I would say about Harvard MIT Math Tournament is they actually organize a real teaching session the next day. I know they for sure that they do it in February. I think they may be doing that for November as well. I know for February because I was there for February when they did it. I'm not sure about November, but they may do that as well. So what happens is on Saturday you have the tournament, and on Sunday they have classes organized at Harvard where you go and sit in a class and you attend a professor giving a lecture, and of course they change the lecture topic to something that you may make sense in 1 hour. So they organize, I think, 4 or 5 different things. So couple of things there is, first thing is, yes, you get to go and experience a math lecture at part of that experience. You also get to go and see a campus. So those are the kind of things you should be thinking of when you say that in addition to that, I love doing math and I want to have fun with my friends doing math, on why you would want to participate in these things.
Yes, definitely. Anything else you would like to add? I know we're almost out of time. There's many other competitions that Math Circle do host, and Mr. Dodds will be sending out information as registration opens. So, for example, we usually do like Purple Comet, Nanomath.
Okay, so Purple Comet. Purple
Mhm.
Comet is another one that on site you can do, which I forgot to mention. And that's like an interesting one. If you're doing Math Circle, you know, Dr. Sega picks many questions from Purple Comet. So that's, and everybody can do that because we can send as many teams as we want. So that would be a good one. It happens in April kind of a time frame, if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
So many other competitions this year we may not be able to do because before during COVID, all of those things were online. Irene, now I think everything will go physical and we just cannot travel to so many places.
Yes, that's true. But I think there is two more things that I would like to mention really quickly. One is Math League, which will lead to the ARMO exam. And then the other thing is something called Math Prize for Girls, for the girls who are in the meeting. So do we want to talk about Math League and ARMO really quickly?
So one quick clarification, Irene, Math League does not lead to ARML.
Oh.
ARML is an independent thing, which again, maybe one of you can talk about both Math League and ARML, but it does not lead to that.
Yeah, originally I think like Math League Middle School was intended to be like math counts practice, and then they decided to also have high school as ARML practice or something. But now I feel like it's just branched off and is doing its own thing now. I don't think it's really ARML practice anymore.
So Math League, my opinion is this, okay? So again, this is based on a few years back when these things used to happen physically and you would get to see who is coming and those kind of things, is that right? So middle school Math League, first thing I've seen those papers and I know they're very high quality. In fact, in my opinion, middle school Math League papers are even higher quality than math counts, okay? And middle school Math League, there is a very strong participation, okay? So when it used to happen physically, even if it is in Pleasanton, everybody, all the schools from South Bay would show up there, like Miller and Redwood, and I don't know all the names, but everybody would show up there, okay? In high school, I think the participation was not that great. In high school, there are a few schools like Valley Christian, Doughty, Bellarmine, who would come to these things regularly. But even from basis, during those days, only the middle school, I think, Catherine, Rohan, they used to participate in the high school one. None of our high school students used to participate in that. But last year, I've been seeing a few of our students have been doing high school Math League. I know Derek has been doing high school Math League, and I don't know about Felix, but Derek, Pranav, and a few other people have been doing. So Math League, I'm not, high school, I'm not 100% sure how good or bad. Maybe Derek can say his opinion because he has done a lot more of that.
Okay, yeah. So for high school Math League, I feel like the style, I feel like maybe one reason it's like not as popular among like other high schoolers is that it's very different from like AMC format or college contests. They really, mostly what they care about is speed. So sprint round and target round, like relay round and team round, they're all very fast paced. So their questions aren't necessarily as like that difficult. It's just more about, can you like see a trick? So it's, I would say, compared to like middle school math league, which was like, it was obviously in preparation for something like math counts. High school Math League, it's very different from other contests. So if you're trying to take it to prepare for AMC or like HMMT, I would say it's probably not worth it. But I will say that it is very fun to like take the contest, especially when you're working in a team.
I agree, and especially when they're in person, you would go as a team with other students from your school, and especially my favorite part of Math League is just the countdown run. The countdown run is always really fun, whether you're participating in it or you're watching other people to do it. Yeah.
So Irene, because you mentioned Math League, not Math League, ARML, maybe we will finish it with ARML, okay? Let me give a quick 2 minute and maybe Rohan can add something. Who else has done Armal? Rohan, you have done, Derek and Felix, you have done Armal or no? Okay, so I think Armal is a great resource. I don't know why more students don't do Armal. Okay, the reason it's a great resource is as part of Armal, they actually do a lot of teaching as well. So typically Berkeley students and sometimes some Stanford students are also involved. Okay, they run this Armal practice sessions. Okay, and last year it was muted, but before COVID, this sessions used to be like, we had many basis students who actually would not travel to Armal, but would come for this practice sessions because it was a good learning experience. But the Armal competition itself, which again, like it happens in a few different places based on the region, our region gets to participate in Las Vegas. So it happens at the University of Las Vegas campus. It's a very, very prestigious competition. Armal is very prestigious competition, but equally important is it's a very fun competition. It's like I actually went with that team, I think 3 years back or so when it was happened physically before this time. This time I could not go. And it felt like to me, it was a huge math party. Like kids were having party all the time. Of course, they were doing very serious math as well, but it was a big party as well.
So that is that Armal usually happen in the spring for those who are interested in that.
It happens in the last week of the school. I think it happens either the weekend after Memorial Day. And you have to travel to Las Vegas, and the team is not a school team. The team is like San Francisco Bay Area organizes teams. So before COVID, they used to send 7 or 8 teams. Last year when it went physical, I think COVID impact was still there. So only 3 teams could be organized. So they sent 3 teams. But before that, there would be 3 elite teams and then 5 or so teams where everybody could participate. And they would organize buses and you could even fly, and it's a great experience.
Yeah, and I can confirm most of what has been said from a student perspective, like especially the tournament experience. I completely agree with the description. I had a lot of fun there, and it's just like a really good to be able to have fun with people who share a common interest with you. And also, I remember that last year there weren't that many lectures, which I'm assuming is a COVID effect, but there was one lecture that I remember very clearly because it was so intriguing that like it was just really intriguing, and it made me love math a lot more.
Yeah, and just a fun fact, many of you must have heard of the Simon favorite factoring trick if you're doing AMC preparation. And the Simon of the Simon favorite factoring trick is one of the people who organizes this. So you get to see him in person.
He also gave the talk I was just talking about.
Oh, that's very cool. Yeah, so maybe that will be the last contest that we'll be talking about. There definitely are more.
So let's see if anyone has any question before we end the thing. So if anyone has a question, please ask either by unmuting yourself or sending on chat. Otherwise, we will wrap up. Okay, so math prize for girls. Let me say something very, again, we missed it the first year as well when my daughter was there because we did not know about it. Okay, so very interestingly, math prize for girl, if you want to participate this year, you should have registered in March, April kind of time frame. So if you have not registered, you have missed this year. So next year, March, April, and I think I sent a reminder to my mailing list, which is a BISV interest group, that math prize for girl registration is open because we ourselves missed it because we did not know it. But the way it happens is they select a subset of girls based on the AMC 10 and 12 scores. My instinct is historically it is a little higher than AMI cutoff. Not very much higher, but it is a little higher than AMI cutoff where they invite. Then the competition itself has 2 phases. In the first phase is It's a Amy style competition. It's not multiple choice, but I think it's a 20 problems in 3 hours or that kind of a stuff. And there are huge cash rewards for that. Okay, there are huge cash rewards for that. I know people in Bay Area have earned up to $50,000. It's capped at $50,000. Like over your years, you can earn only $50,000, but people have earned that. But that's the first round of competition. Then based on people who qualify for that, they invite people to the next level, which is called their Olympiad counterpart. Okay, Math Prize for Girl Olympiad. And there they give medals like gold medal, silver medal based on that competition. So that's Math Prize for Girls. If you are registered, you are good for this year. If you have not registered and you think you would qualify, pay attention. And I usually send an email reminder as well.
Also on the topic of Math Prize for Girls, and like obviously I haven't done it myself, but I have looked at many of the problems, and I will say they're very high quality. They especially have very good problems of a complex number nature. And
It's a very high quality contest.
And I think all they ask is just what your AMC score is.
And you have to travel there. So you have to travel to MIT. It happens
Yeah.
physically in MIT.
That's true.
But it's worth going if you're invited.
Mhm. If there is no more question, then I think we could stop here. Always feel free to email us for any questions that pop up in email or in the Discord server. I think we should definitely get the Discord server to be more active. Again, I guess just planners for the future. We will be hosting practice gut round. We'll be hosting practice AMC sections. I don't know if we have middle schoolers here, but we will have math count clubs coming. What else do we have? Again, all of what we talked about, we will probably send a PDF about the information later. And is there any other tips that anyone would want to give before we wrap up the meeting? If
So
not,
thank you,
I guess,
Erin, and thank you, Maggie, Derek, Felix, and Rohan. And thanks everyone for joining. Okay.
thank you. And I guess we'll see everyone either at school or